Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Focused and Fulfilled podcast. I am Althea Walters, your host. I am a corporate trainer. I am a productivity coach, and I'm also a goal success coach. Now, today I have with me my special guest, Karen Yates. Now, Karen is a financial alignment coach. What are we going to get there? Love that title. Karen, we're going to be talking about money. We're going to be talking about goals. We're going to be talking about how it is that we can really use money as a tool that is going to help us to achieve our goals. So a lot of conversations are going to come up today. So interesting. I can't wait. So I'm going to hand over to Karen. Karen, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Althea. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes. So Karen, I want you to just give me a background on yourself and just tell me your journey towards becoming a financial alignment coach.
All right. Well, I'll start back, not make this too long, but I'll start back in childhood. I knew when I was a very, very small child that I was going to go to college. This was very much programmed into me. There was this path, right? You get good grades, you get into a good college, you get good grades, you get a good job, you get married, buy a house, have kids, work, and eventually retire.
Exactly.
Right? This is the path. This is what was programmed into me. And I was doing it. I was following it, right? This is what I knew. And this is what I was following. So all's going well. You know, I get my good grades, I get my good job, I get married, have the house, have the kids, lose my job several times because my chemistry career that I thought was going to be super stable turned out it wasn't. So 18 years into our marriage, my husband and I have 2 children. We've moved several times across states because I've lost my job 3 times, narrowly missing a 4th. And we found ourselves at a place where we were really, really low in our relationship. I mean, to the point where we're talking divorce. Like this is serious stuff. And you add to it that we were broke at the time. Well, that financial stress does not help relationships.
No.
You know,
too many things going on there.
Absolutely. So we were at a really, really low point, and we looked at each other and we said, we have to do something different. We cannot keep going this way. We're 18 years into our marriage. I mean, who expects to be broke when they're 18 years into their marriage, right? You're supposed to have this pot of money.
That's a grown adult, 18.
Yeah, right. You're supposed to have this pot of money for your retirement and all this stuff's supposed to be lined up, and we weren't there. And there were a number of reasons that got us there. You know, job losses didn't help. A real estate flip that turned into a flop, you know, really took us out. But we're here at this point, we're like, oh my gosh, we have to do something different or we're not going to make it. And so we did the only thing we knew how to do, which was just sit down and talk to each other. And, you know, really get to those emotional conversations, get to where it's really heartfelt and like, what is going on here? What can we do? What do we want? What do each of us want? And we both realized that we wanted the same thing. We wanted to work on our relationship, to repair our relationship. But deep down, our biggest goal was really to spend more time with each other and with our 2 kids. And my career, my job didn't allow for that. You know, it's a 9-to-5 job. Well, really it was a 7-to-5 job. So it's like, how can you cram extra time in there? You know, this is not a job where I could say, you know what, I want to work a weird schedule. Just let me work 4 10-hour days. No, it was already expected that you work a 10-hour day. So, it just wasn't there. The opportunity wasn't there. And so we looked at each other and we're like, we have to get creative. You know, we have to do something different because we are not living this life that we want. You know, this is not life that we imagined it. You know, this gold at the end of the rainbow, it's not there. Yeah. And what happened? What went wrong? Where are we? How are we enjoying life even? And we're not. And so we're like, okay, we have to start thinking differently. What can we do? And so over the course of couple of months, it kind of came up. It's like, well, what if we kind of ditched the American dream, stop going along this path that is so programmed into us and say, you know, we want to do something differently.
Yeah.
And so, okay, it's really scary when that first happens. When that first thought comes out.
I can imagine.
But it came out as, you know, what if we left this path, left the US and started traveling? It's something that we had always dreamed of doing. But we always said, okay, this is going to be in retirement. You know, when we retire, then we'll be able to do this.
Because that's how we have been programmed.
Exactly. Yes, this is our path, right? And so, you know, even at the time though, we're like, okay, well, for that to happen, one, you have to have your money, right? You have to have finances lined up so you can actually afford to travel when you retire. And two, you have to be in good health, right? If you're, if there's a health problem, you're not going to do that. And then now we add to it, is there a global pandemic going on so that you can actually travel, right? I mean, all of these things, right? You don't know. And so we looked at each other, we're like, why are we waiting for this? We only live once. We need to enjoy life. And so I'm just going to throw it out there. It was really scary. Okay. I went to work the next day and I'm like, oh my gosh, I couldn't stop thinking about it though, because this idea had been planted. The seed has started to grow in my head. And the more I thought about it, the more positive it became. I was like, okay, well, we would have more time with each other. We'd have more time with our kids. We'd get to travel and see places that we have always wanted to see. And in all likelihood, probably never would have. And what's really holding us here? Yeah. And, so we talked and talked and talked. Okay. This was not a simple decision. This was months worth of heartfelt conversations of saying, okay, how can we do this? How can we make this happen? Do we want to make this happen? And the more we talked about it, the more the pros started to really rise to the top and the cons started to just fall by the wayside. It's like everything, we discussed everything from, schooling of the kids to, what happens if they marry people from different continents. We have 2 kids and it's like, you're in your programmed life and you're like, okay, well, they're going to go off and they're going to go to college and they're probably going to meet their spouse, either in college or after, and they're going to be a drive away or a flight away, in the United States. And we're like, well, if we go traveling, where are they going to meet their spouse? And it could very well be that one of them ends up in Europe and one of them's in Asia or Africa or South America. And we had that conversation because we're like, we're changing up our reality here. Yeah. And we're changing up this path. And so, we deep dove into those questions and said, what, this is something that we're good with, that we're okay. If they end up in different locations, different countries, different continents, okay, well, we travel and see them, or they travel and see us. And exactly. We can make this work. And so we didn't, we explored all these options and we found solutions that made sense for us. And we said, what, okay, this is what we want to do. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then really came the struggle of, okay, well, we don't have money. So how do we do that? And exactly. And my job isn't remote. So how do we, create income? And so, those were the biggest concerns really is the finances. How do you make this work? Yeah. So right as you're going towards that, I realized that the thing that came up for you, so you were triggered based on what was going on in your relationship. You were broke at a point in time. You realized that you needed to make a shift. So that's one of the first things, is that acknowledgement of something that you need to do to make a difference in your life. A lot of us get stuck with, we're going through the thing, we're going through the motions, but we have not even paused to say, what is our reality and what do we want? One of the things that you also said, you said, look, we stopped and we talked about it. Now, a lot of people don't talk about money. A lot of people don't talk about it. And the more you spoke about it, you guys came up with solutions. Yes. Yes. So now you are telling me about, you had to create income to help to manifest and to bring to reality all the things that you planned with your husband. Tell us a little bit more about that. Right. So creating the income was really our first focus. How can we do that? What do we want to do? Do we want to find remote work? Do we want to have, remote work now with COVID is much more common, but this was 2018, beginning of 2019, not as common. Are there options? Absolutely. But for us, we were like, we really want to have our own business, something that we can do wherever we are in whatever time zone we are, have an internet connection and do that. And so we started pursuing that. We have initially started with a marketing agency and doing marketing online for other companies. And that was okay. But we transitioned later, realizing that this really wasn't our passion. It didn't light us up. And I'll get to what we ended up with later. I mean, I guess you already spilled it, financial alignment, but it really came from our own process here. So we had hit this low in 2018, and 11 months later, we were boarding a plane with one-way tickets to Bali, all 4 of us together. Oh. And we had saved up 1 year's worth of expenses. And so we fixed the job thing, and then we tackled the immediate finances, immediate need for money. And we really did that just through very, very intentional spending.
Mhm.
So, we obviously had to spend some money to get airplane tickets and
Right,
equipment that we needed and all of that. But on our day-to-day spending, we really looked at every dollar that we were spending and saying, is this helping us towards our goal? Or is it not helping us towards our goal? And that's really where we started weighing things. And it's really where we find in the financial industry that everybody preaches, oh, you need to have a budget. You need to have a budget. And I hate budgeting. I'm just going to throw it out there. I think there's such a negative mindset that results from it. You have all this inner self-talk that says, I can't afford this. It's not in my budget. I can't have this. I can't. Right? And when you change it and you focus on your goals, the words that you use to speak to yourself are, you know what, I'm choosing not to buy this right now because this goal of XYZ, whatever that goal is just so much more important to me.
Right.
And so it didn't mean that we didn't live. We absolutely lived for those 11 months, but it meant
the choices were different.
Absolutely. We made different choices with our money. So if we're going to go out to dinner, well, maybe instead of going out to the nicer restaurant where we're going to spend $60, $70, $80 for a meal, we're going to choose to go to one where we can spend $25, $30.
Yes.
And we're going to be very intentional about that. And we're going to sit there, we're going to eat that meal. And we're going to be like, okay, you know what? We're still enjoying this meal because really we go out to dinner because we don't want to cook or clean up afterwards. You want to break from that norm, right?
Yes.
Well, if you're spending $80 or you're spending $30, you still have that same enjoyment of I'm not cooking and I'm not cleaning.
Exactly.
And so focusing on that and not saying, okay, well, if I was at the $80 restaurant, I'd have this different food. It doesn't really matter when your goal is to save that money for us, for our travels.
Yeah, how insightful. I mean, I like the connection to being deliberate and being intentional with the choices and the decisions that you have to make. Because it's not like you just all of a sudden got into financial alignment, got into being able to just access everything you wanted. Along your journey, there were intentional choices, there were sacrifices as well that you had to do. And that is towards fueling your goal. You had a goal to travel, to move along with your family, but you had to finance that, and financing that meant that you had to make some decisions. So, those things are important. A lot of people may see it differently or may choose, they may not even feel comfortable with scaling back from a high-end restaurant to another restaurant, But because you are so focused, and I like the fact that everybody in your family seem to be focused on the same goal.
Yes, we got the kids involved with it too.
Oh, awesome.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's important. How did they show up,
right
inside of this?
So when we told them they were 12 and 6, our daughter turned 7 before we left. But they were like excited about it. Initially, our 12-year-old was a little bit hesitant. He's like, oh my gosh, we've moved so many times and we just got here. And then he started to realize, okay, there's a lot of positives here. But for them, getting them involved in the decisions and helping with this, for them, when we would go out to eat, getting lemonade was a treat at the restaurant. And so we just got a little app on our phone, and we would say, okay, well, every time you guys don't get a lemonade, we're going to put that money towards our travel fund. And so we'd sit down and, okay, are we getting lemonade today? No, we're not. Okay, we're going to transfer, $10 or whatever it is into the travel account. And so they're like, oh, hey, I'm helping towards this goal too.
Exactly.
And so we're all in it together. We're all aiming for the same goal. And it just made it so much easier. They're not saying, oh, can I get this toy? Can I get this, shirt? Or, they're like, no, we're working towards traveling, and that's exciting. They were all on board. And so it was a lot of fun to really include them in that and have them be part of the process as well.
Yeah. So I like that because you're teaching them sound money management principles from their age, and the fact that they can be so responsible about choosing if they got lemonade or not. That's a big decision. And the more they're involved, you know that they will become better money managers along the way.
Absolutely. The kids, I mean, they learn from everything that we do. They're watching, and they learn more from what we do than what we say. And so having them see that, having them be part of it, it was really important to us for them to actually, join in and work towards this goal together as a family, because we weren't doing it. It wasn't just my husband and I doing this. We were in this as a family. We're doing this so that we can all be together, so that we can all experience our travels together. And so it was really important to share that.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the fact that it's the entire family. Now, Karen, people struggle with money management. People struggle with really putting budgets together, putting all of these things together to help their own goals. Why do you think we struggle so much?
So life is ever changing, right? And I hear this so often, that people spend all this time putting together this perfect budget, right? They've got every dollar accounted for, and you can spend this much on housing and this much on food and this much on eating out and this much on clothing. And you spend all this time, and then next month something happens. Life happens. You get a flat tire, the roof gets a hole in it. It doesn't even have to be catastrophic. It can just be something that's this little hiccup, and life happens, and suddenly your budget is just out the window. Mm-hmm. And as I mentioned before, there's all this negativity with budgeting. And so what we ended up getting into this business because we looked back at our own experience and said, oh my gosh, we have to share with people how you can do this. How you can feel that you don't have the resources, you don't have the money available, and yet you can still go after that goal and you can make it happen. Mm-hmm. And through doing this, we're like, we've never used a budget. No matter how low we've been, no matter how broke we've been, we've never used a budget. We've been very careful with our money, but we've never used a budget. And people, I think, are conditioned, they've been programmed that, okay, this is what you have to do. You have to do this budget, right? And so people spend all this time on it. And then, life happens, there's a hiccup, and then they're like, oh, I can't do this. I'm just not capable of handling a budget. And we found that when we shift the script and when we say, okay, you know what, we're going to focus on your goals. Oh my gosh, those money decisions are so much easier, because you're like, this goal, this thing that I want over here is more important than this, donut at Dunkin' Donuts or my Starbucks coffee or whatever it is. But the great thing is we're not telling you can't have those things. We're just saying, you know what, be intentional with how you spend your money. Make sure that when you're making those choices, you're not just doing them out of habit. And you're not stopping and getting your morning coffee because every morning you get your morning coffee. You're stopping and saying, you know what, I'm going to really enjoy this coffee this morning because, oh my gosh, I had a bad night and I need that caffeine boost and it's going to help me through my day. Or the next day you say, you know what, I'm feeling pretty good. I'm going to make coffee at home or what have you. And it's just getting rid of this habitual spending that most of us do. And it's just this norm that we just, spend out of habit. We do this thing, maybe it's dinner out every Friday night. Okay. Yes. Well, it becomes a habit. So how much are you really enjoying that dinner out? When you start to be really intentional with your money and you're saying, you know what, I'm choosing to spend this money on this dinner out. Now you're like, oh, you know what, I need to enjoy this. I need to live in this moment and really feel it and experience it and spend this money and enjoy spending it. Because money's not something to be just hoarded and held on to. We want to enjoy life, but we want to really enjoy it when we are spending it.
Yeah, amazing. Because you touched on a point in terms of the budgeting, and you really don't do budgets. And a lot of people have been programmed to do a budget, because sometimes if you don't know where you are, then you're not able to probably see where you need to go. Now, there are different principles used by different persons, but what you are saying is that you would rather the person focus intentionally on the goal and also look at their habitual spending.
Yes. And what we teach is really looking at your expense tracking. So you're going to track where you have spent your money in the previous month.
Mhm.
You go through, so it's not that you don't look at your money. Don't hear that. Please, please,
Yes.
please don't hear that. You do need to know where you're spending it, but you look at it from the previous month and you use those numbers to formulate a plan, not a budget, but a plan for the next month. So if you look back at last month and you say, oh my gosh, we spent, so much money eating out.
Yeah.
And it's not really how, we don't feel good about that. Okay, well, it's not about regret about last month. It's like, okay, this month, we're going to really make an effort to spend less eating out.
Mhm.
And it just, we would rather put that money towards our goal, whatever that goal is.
Right. And each time you save from changing a habit or reducing a habit, then you put it towards your goal fund.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, I love that. So Karen, tell me in terms of, along the way, you would have been your journey. What are some of the lessons that you learned? Probably 2 or 3 lessons that you learned about money. What are some of the lessons from the time you realized that you were broke to now? What are some of the key lessons that you
I think that first thing is that you need to talk to your spouse about money. You guys have to be able to talk about money. And I'm just gonna raise my hand and admit it. Like, I avoided talking about money like the plague. Like and I'm so mad when I look back at it now. It was this gender role, and I despise gender roles with a passion. But I had assumed this gender role from my childhood where the husband handles the finances. So as soon as my husband and I got together, I'm like, here's the checkbook, honey, you deal with it. And I didn't want to talk about money, and it hindered us. And so one of the biggest takeaways that I had is when we finally sat down and we said, okay, we have to do something different. We need to talk. We need to be able to talk about money, where we're at, where we want to be, what we want to do, what decisions we want to make. It changed everything, because while we had the same goal of spending more time with each other, we were on completely different paths to get there. And the paths were counterintuitive. They were fighting each other. And it's like, once we agreed that, okay, this is our goal, now let's figure out how we're going to get there together. Oh, wow. Everything changed. Everything changed, in our relationship as well as in our finances. And so that is like my number one takeaway. I hear couples often say, oh, well, we have different accounts, it's his money and her money. And I say, you guys are a couple.
Exactly.
It's your money. Like, how are you ever going to get to those goals if your thought process
going separate ways?
This is my money and this is their money. No. I'm just going to stand there. Some people might not like that, but it's my firm belief, if you really want to get somewhere, you have to do it together.
Yes.
And so number one takeaway that, and number two takeaway is probably just avoid the budgeting. Just there's a better way out there. And, I often relate budgeting to dieting. People go on a diet, and what happens? They obsess about the food that they can't have, right? Oh my gosh, that pizza. Oh, I just die for a slice of pizza. Whatever it is, right?
I hate that thing.
Absolutely. And so you're on this diet, you're obsessing about this food you can't have. You're on this budget, you're obsessing about all these things that you can't afford. When you have the money, I have money, but I can't afford it. It's just all this negative, right? So what happens when you go off the diet? Well, most people binge on whatever they couldn't have, right? And often end up in a worse place than when they started. And it's the same thing with budgeting, right? Oh, I blew the budget because whatever, I got a flat tire, or I just couldn't take it anymore. I felt terrible and I just wanted to treat myself. So I blew my budget and forget it. And then they end up in a worse financial situation because they're like, I can't budget. I can't do this. I'm just going to live life. And so I'm like, just get rid of the budget and really focus on where you want to be and how you're going to get there.
Yeah. Okay, great. So those were some great tips. You shared some real inspiration and how you really get to financing your goals, achieving your money goals. People have different routes, people have different strategies and different ways how to get there. I appreciated everything that you said, Karen. But Karen, before you go, tell us about your business and how do you help persons and how do we get in touch with you?
Sure. So we created a business called Inspire My Money. Really, based on inspiring people to go after their dreams. Because when we started sharing our plan to travel, we had so many people tell us, oh my gosh, that's so wonderful, you're going after your dreams. And it made us realize that these people aren't going after theirs. That so many people don't go after their dreams. And so we were like, oh, we have to inspire people to go after their dreams. So that's really the birth of our business, was Inspire My Money. And it's really about working through the process of getting these goals really laser focused on what is it that you want out of life, and not just in money. Not, we know that money is really interwoven through all of all aspects of our lives, really. And so we look at it from
all our goals.
Absolutely. We look at it from a holistic point of view. What is it that you want out of your career, out of your family life, out of your fitness? All of these things we take into account, right? So we get laser focused on goals, and then we really work on relationship, you and your spouse, and how you talk about money, how you get there together, how you resolve either avoidance, which is what a lot of people have, or actual conflict. And, it can be verbal conflict, it can be nonverbal conflict. And so we work through that. And then we really start tackling the finances on how to really get organized, and how to look at this expense tracking, and how to make those decisions together then about future months, so that you're really working towards that goal. So we have a couple of courses. We actually have a free one on our site right now. And there's videos, trainings, and then we also work one-on-one with people within that course, so that you really get the specific information for your situation. So, people have questions like, oh, I've got this, I've got that, what do I do? And you really get that benefit of having our personal input into those situations. And so the easiest way, you can find me on Facebook and LinkedIn, but one of the easiest ways is probably through our website, which is inspiremymoney.com.
Okay, absolutely. Great. So that's www.inspiremymoney.com. You can go there. You can access more information about Karen Yates. You can also get the free courses that are available to get you started around your money management and your financial life. So it's so good to have you today, Karen, on the Focused and Fulfilled podcast. I learned a lot through your sharing, and I know my audience will also benefit from hearing from you. Any last words as we wrap up?
I would just like to leave your audience with a word of inspiration to just, if you have that dream that you've held in the back of your head saying, oh, maybe, hopefully someday, fingers crossed, go after it. Don't just sit and wait. Don't hope. Don't cross your fingers. Like, go after it. Even if everything isn't lined up, even if things are lined up against you right now. I mean, we were broke, we're like dead broke. And 11 months later, we had made this happen. And so there is a way, you can find a way. And I just want to leave you with an inspiration to do it, to really put some energy into making it happen, because we only live once and we don't know how long we're going to be here. We couldn't have wrapped up. Thank you so much for your last words, and thank you so much for being on the Focused and Fulfilled podcast. Good evening, good night, good morning, wherever you are listening. Thank you so much again. Goodbye.